talking about the research that Barbara Bartlick and I have been doing for the past, now going on 6 years together, since exploring my family's abduction experiences and encounters that my husband and I will be talking about tomorrow. I'd like to define 4 terms the way I'm going to be using them. Excuse me. And if y'all please bear with me, I've had less than 5 hours sleep. I've been on a plane for 2 days, and I just got here. So if I don't look calm and relaxed, guess why? I'll get better as we go along. First term, abduction. There's a lot of controversy about political correctness in terminology dealing with the interaction of aliens and humans. And I have no qualms about saying I use the term abduction because it's the most specifically correct term for what I'm describing. An abduction, in my definition, is the forcible removal and control of a human from his or her normal environment. That's what I mean when I say abduction, nothing else. Contact, encounter between human and alien in which there is no forcible removal, although there is always control during the encounter of the human by the alien, and often involves delivery of information or a message, and may or may not be with the human physically viewing or in the physical presence of the alien. So I use these 2 terms as separate experiences, and within the contact experience there are a variety of subdivisions we'll get into if we have time a little bit later. The second pair of terms I want to define are positive and negative. Again, we've been cautioned by many people that we shouldn't even be thinking in terms of positive and negative, and I find this to be total BS. Anything that relates to human concerns, we have to consider implications for these things. And certainly anything as profound and as unnerving and as totally foreign, I don't want to say alien, that seems to be repetitious, to our experiences as the contact with a non-human species must have implications. It's not an accident, and it has consequences, and certainly there's an agenda. So when I use the term positive and negative, I'm referring to those things, positive, which are constructive to human concerns. Negative are those things that are detrimental to human concerns. I'm a human and I'm concerned.
Karla, we have the whole chandelier. We have the whole chandelier shaking above you as you're speaking about it.
Oh, good. The audience is getting restless. Are we back on? Okay. Okay. How's that? All right. Did everybody get what I said on positive and negative? Anybody want that repeated? All right. How about abduction and contact? We're okay there? Okay. Positive, those things that are constructive to human concerns. Negative, those things that are detrimental to human concerns. And if you're not concerned whether these contacts are positive or negative to human concerns, then you and I are from different planets, and so we may have a problem in communication. Now, a lot of the major researchers say don't talk in these terms. Let's simply look. Let's simply examine data and not be concerned about what agenda may be behind these contacts and abductions, and that's just not where I come from. So you're free to disagree, and I think that's what makes this work very exciting. But I think we must, in fact, answer one question more than any other, and that is, what is the agenda? What is the motivation behind any of these contacts or abductions? What are the aliens here for? Until we know what that agenda concerns, we don't know how to react. We can be fools or we can be wise men, but we will not have a clue until we understand what is behind this agenda. And right now, without fully examining all of the data, not the censored partial reports that we so often get secondhand and thirdhand about abduction and contact experiences, you can't make any decisions. And I'm not going to take upon myself the paternalistic or maternalistic role of trying to decide what you can handle knowing and what you cannot. I'm not going to censor or limit my information, nor am I going to try to judge it. I simply want to present it. And I think we're all intelligent enough to look at the data firsthand and make our own assessment. Now, a problem right now is that there are many theories to explain this phenomenon. And abduction researchers, most of whom have never had an encounter themselves, are really good at coming up with theories. And I'll tell you now, I don't have one. And I'm an abductee as well as a researcher. The problem with the theories are that none of them cover all the data, and they divide us. And we become so entrenched in defending these theories that we put our personal egos and reputations on the line for that it becomes more like religious or holy war activity between research camps than a concerted effort to try to figure out what the data really means. So I have no theory, I'm just going to give you the data. And I'll tell you this, the one thing I can say, and I can only say one thing I know. There's some things I think I know. Very few. But the one thing I know is that the evidence does show a massive, ongoing, long-term alien involvement with humans, and nobody has a convincing explanation for it yet, especially the aliens. Four main theories are the four main groups the theories fall into, and I'm just going to name them off, and then as we go through the data, I'm going to present firsthand from the research that we've been doing. You can see how they support or how they don't support these main theory patterns. Number one theory, the ETs, and I use that term loosely, I don't have a clue where they come from. I don't know what they are. I do believe they're finite and fallible, however. I don't think they're gods. So I just use that for shorthand. The ETs, first theory, says have an objective scientific agenda. The second theory, the ETs have a self-serving agenda. Third, the ETs have a human survival, human-oriented agenda. And fourth, the ETs have a spiritual agenda. These are where the main theories right now have to end up being grouped. So we'll go with those in mind, and you see where the data seems to point for yourself. All right, we've got our slides going on here. First, we talked about the first group, the objective scientific agenda, and for each of these categories, there is supportive evidence and there is contradictory evidence. For instance, For instance, we have reports going back into the 50s of the ETs taking soil samples, plant samples, and so on. Now, if you remember, if you've done your homework, wait, we're not supposed to be moving, guys. Back there with the slides, okay. This goes back, as I said, early on in the reports of UFO sightings and landing reports. We're seeing very many cases of soil samples and plant samples around the world. This one is a drawing from a case I'm working on for the current book dealing with 9 different women's experiences around the country. This one occurred within the last 2 or 3 years, and it tells us if the aliens are doing objective soil sampling, they're the stupidest creatures warning the planet right now because they've been doing it for 40 years and apparently haven't got it right yet. All right. I don't have a lot of slides in. We'll just come in and out of slides if you don't mind. That's all I'm going to be doing for just a second. But you can leave the lights down while I talk, so we'll be getting back to them. We know we have evidence showing that they do studies of the human reproduction system. That's certainly not a surprise. Going back to Betty and Barney Hill or further, if you go back to Villalobos in South America. We do know more recently, people are grudgingly admitting in this research that they're also concerned with the study of human psychology, as well as the physiology. There are pain and pleasure studies. Obviously, these seem to be along those lines that people have been reporting. And it's very hard to fit that into what are they doing on a scientific and objective agenda if they are treating us no better than animals. Maybe that's what they're doing. We do pain and pleasure studies on animals. Perhaps that's what they're doing with us. But we also have evidence that they study human military capabilities with their inspections and landings and interferences at our military areas. All right, some of the things that support this possible set of theories. But then there are some things that do not necessarily support it, and we have to think how would these fit in. For instance, some of the body marks that abductees regularly turn up with after encounters. You're very familiar, I'm sure, with the scoop marks, which are supposedly samples taken from us for some particular scientific reason, or the straight line cuts, and we have a variety of explanations for those. But I'll tell you from the work that we have been doing in about a 5-state area, from Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Alabama, larger than a 5-state area. In the case after case count, if you want to keep up with sheer statistics, we have other marks that turn up much more often than the scoops and straight line marks. For instance, bruises and punctures often in certain patterns. What we've come to call the clamp mark, the set of 3 bruises that seem to be where 3 fingers or 3-pronged something has been clamped, usually on the thigh or the upper arm of the person as if they had been carried or forcibly held down. And these turn up over and over again. What do we have here? Okay, another set, different set altogether. These are very typical from case to case. We also have the puncture marks, as if an injection has been given, but very often they will be in double sets. We've come to call these the snake bites, two little punctures close together in various parts of the body. So these turn up more often in our research than do the scoop marks and the straight line marks. We also have the fun of the claw marks. Now, what this has to do with a scientific or objective experimentation, I can't really tell you. This is my husband's back, by the way. On the morning of January 13th, 1989, after an encounter where the handling of this specimen they were coming to examine was a little rough because he didn't want to go. There was also a large triangular patch of rash that did not show up in the photograph that wrapped from the backbone up, that was the baseline, around to the front of the stomach and then up, making the apex of the triangle right under the side of his arm, under his arm. All right. Another set. This is the next two pictures are from the same person. This is the upper part of the young man's thigh where there are gashes that are definitely not surgical incisions. And these marks are taken the photos are taken at least 3 days. It may have been 4 after the event occurred, so they're already quite on the way to healing. And what you aren't able to see are the large welt lines that were still visible to the eye, but not to the camera, that ran from the thigh all the way down to the knee. There were about 6 or 8 of these running down past the V-shaped scratch marks. These were in November of '88. And then we also have what we've come to call a little ET brand, the triangle mark, and they come in a variety of types. Here's one that I had on the morning of November 1st, 1988, a triangle of punctures into the neck area over a vein area. Triangle bruise patterns also turn up. This one on the back of the calf. And these lines that you see that are sort of light rays coming out, those are just reflections from the lighting when the slide was taken. They're not really on the body, but you will see the 3 white balls that make a triangle down toward the bottom of one of those lines. That's a permanent mark. A red triangle, again, the photos are so much more clear than the slides, I have to apologize. A red triangle mark on my husband's leg. Within the red triangle are 3 white balls. Again, they're much more visible from the actual photograph, but a variety of triangle marks. And this is from one of the women whose material will be included in the book I'm working on now down in Central Texas, who had an extraordinary experience where she gained time in an encounter rather than losing it, and ended up with, probably 18 or more different marks, bruises, punctures, and scratches, and so on the next morning. This is one set of triangle punctures on her back. And because she was afraid they wouldn't show up, she had circled on her body where various marks were. This is only part of her body that next morning. All right, so we have to say, what are they doing with that? It inflicts these sort of marks that would fit into any of these agendas. This is what the data looks like when you start looking at the people over and over again. Very few scoop marks, although some of these people do have them. The other marks are much more numerous. All right, second set of explanations. ETs have a self-serving agenda, and we hear a lot of variations on this. They're crossbreeding to upgrade their race, I think, is the #1 mainstream theory right now. They range all the way down to using humans as a type of resource, using us for emotional energy, using us for physical fluids that they take from our bodies, even as a food source. All of these fall within the self-serving agenda. But we also have contradictory data where people report increased psychic abilities after their contacts. We have reports of healings after alien contacts. We have many spiritual uplifting messages that are delivered in some of these contacts.